Howdy folks, welcome to Adrenaline Fueled Firearms. My name is Scott. I hope you're returning. If you're not and you found this randomly, please feel free to give the whole video a chance. It's a little long, but give it a chance. Like, subscribe, notification, all that happiness. If you don't like it, look at other people's stuff, give other people a chance. What I'm going to talk about today is why 6.5 PRC in an AR. It's an odd round. I have 308, I have 6.5 Creedmoor, and I decided that I wanted to go with something that had a little more punch or could go out to a little longer range with better accuracy, with better power down range. Now, this was originally a Versus issue, however, for reasons of my own, after building 6.5 PRC and a 300 Winchester short magnum upper, I've got the 6.5 PRC still. You can see me shoot it in one of my shorts. This should be a 4, maybe a 5-part series total. I'm still establishing how I want to do all my videos for the channel. So we're going to start off with why 6.5 PRC in an AR. Now, it did present some challenges right from the beginning, above and beyond the common things that we run into now post-COVID. I actually started this build during COVID. So you can imagine how much fun it was to get everything. And then acquiring the ammo was this big challenge. Now, anytime you're doing your research, there are a lot of things to consider. Probably the first thing is going to be why. Why do I want? Why do I think I need? Why do I want to? This is a question you can only answer for yourself. I can only provide you with my logic schedule and my findings from the internet and why I did what I did. So, first off, 6.5 PRC was a very difficult round to find all the pieces, parts, and bits for. At the time I did the build, there was only one company that was doing kind of an off-the-shelf 6.5 PRC barrel, and that was Deadshot Barrels, who I believe is out of Washington. They had a standard 90-day wait period on any of their barrels, so I expected about 90 days before my barrel arrived, after I ordered the barrel. There was research before the order of the barrel, such as, okay, one of these is not out here. I knew that CAC was building 22 and 24 inch barreled 300 Winchester short magnum uppers, and when 6.5 PRC came out, I looked at the cartridge and I was like, okay, well, this is this newer 6.5 millimeter, more aerodynamic, more versatile bullet. So I was curious to see what it would do in a magnum round, because it is 6.5 PRC, uses magnum powder. Merry Christmas. Magnum base. It's a magnum round. So this narrowed down some of my parts considerations, and this also narrowed down some of my resources for research. So part of the reason I'm doing this why video is some data on 6.5 PRC, and just generally some of my base experiences with it, to give you a little bit of data off the bat before I do the actual build video. So what we end up with after a significant period of time is an LR 308 pattern AR, DPMS cut. So lower, upper, barrel, handguard, complete AR. We're not going to get too deep into the whole mess of what is an AR or anything like that. So 6.5 PRC, if you're going to build it, or if you want to try to build it in AR, your option for upper is CAC. Merry Christmas. That said, your upper, being a CAC, will only work with a CAC Magnum bolt carrier group. So bolt and bolt carrier group from CAC with your upper from CAC. This, as part of your research, needs to be step one. What are my parts availabilities? What are my options for vendors? Merry Christmas. Spend a ton of money and have something custom machined for a one-off if you've got that kind of money, or buy from CAC. Period. Done. End of story. I tried other bolt carrier groups. They did not work with a CAC upper. So I ended up with a complete CAC BCG for the Magnum and a technically complete CAC upper for the Magnum. So they are both on CAC's website. Go into your AR-10, I believe, is what they have it listed under, and then go into Magnum, and then I think they have a whopping 6 parts. That being said, you need to keep an eye on your gas tube lengths. I went with the Magnum gas tube length because I could find gas tubes for that length, and Deadshot barrels would let you select that length. You may be limited in what lengths you can do by what is available at the time of ordering. So this is another consideration during your research. What length of gas tube do I want? If I'm going with an AR, what can I get? What can't I get? What are my other options? So I went that route. This will also limit your handguard options because certain uppers are made a certain way and can only use certain handguards. This will limit a number of things. As anyone who may or may not have built an AR in the past, your upper and lower are basically your main foundational parts. You select all of your other options based on what you end up with on your upper and somewhat on the lower. You have a little bit more tinkering you can do with the lower, and they're both somewhat generalized so that they don't require different special barrels, like if you were working with a Savage Action versus a Remington Action versus a Winchester. They're ARs, they're going to have some of the same stuff, even though they are the more complicated AR-10 LR308 setups. Now, when we move beyond these, you do run into some magazine restrictions due to the overall length of cartridge when you're dealing with 6.5 PRC, which is listed as 2.955 overall length, according to an online resource that is discussing specifically the Hornady Precision Hunter cartridge. Now, when you're looking at this, another thing you need to consider is your magazines. It is a semi-automatic, it is an AR. There are some magazine options out there. Magpul, as far as I could find, was the only manufacturer who produces a polymer magazine that is designed to accommodate greater than a standard 308 AOL. So the Mag 577 magazine is designed to be a highly reliable magazine for SR25 M110 pattern rifles using longer than SAMI spec match ammunition up to 2.830 overall length. Let me say that again real quick. That Magpul magazine will handle 2.830 AOL, and your 6.5 PRC is 2.955. So you already know you're going to have to deal with a little bit of tinkering one way or the other, and you're probably going to end up loading. So another consideration. The loading didn't scare me. I was kind of looking for another round that I could also load beside my 6.5 Creedmoor loadings. So same bullet, different powder, different casing, but there would be some crossover as I looked further down the road. Yeah, there were some limitations, but main thing is you're not just going to be able to purchase any off-the-shelf 6.5 PRC ammunition, insert it into any magazine that is readily available commercially for your LR308, SR25, M110 pattern rifles. So you can already see early in the research that there are going to be problems. I ended up working primarily with some Norma 6.5 PRC because I managed to acquire it cheap. On the loading side, what I did is I pulled the bullets and then pressed them. Pulled a single cartridge, checked how much space I had inside after the powder charged from the factory, and found that I could press these bullets down to that measurement so that they would readily fit in the cartridges. Readily fit the cartridge into the magazine. Now, that said, I looked at Federal Fusion ammunition, which is a flat tip, soft point, copper jacketed round, which knocked a couple hundredths off the overall length and gave me a velocity at approximately 29-25. So I was looking for something high velocity. A lot of the ammunition ends up in the 2,900 to 3,000 foot per second range on commercial ammunition, even if you have to tinker with it some for your length. Be very careful when you're tinkering with that cartridge length. Be sure you do your research and you know what you're doing before you even start fiddling with it. I went out and asked a bunch of questions of different people who had more experience with loading than I did. But like I said, important in your research, what cartridge you're looking at, is it even possible, what's it going to cost, a lot of different things you need to consider when you look at a cartridge. So with 6.5 PRC, right off the bat, I knew it was going to be a bit of a challenge. Now, what I didn't know was, at the time, it seemed somewhat reasonable. What I ended up with once I got my rifle built was having to wait a year from the time I had built the actual upper to begin my break-in. Dead Shot Barrels has a 100 shot break-in period where it has a little card they send you with very specific instructions on it. This is how often you clean it during the first break-in. Break-in is 100 rounds. Do this, do this, do this, do this. I'm not going to read it off for you. It's not super in-depth, but it is kind of specific. And break-in is important with any barrel because it will affect your accuracy. It was more important for me on this build because what I was looking for was long-range accuracy. And when you are dealing with long-range accuracy, a little bit in close is a lot more downrange. And it is not a proportional change. It's not just, well, I'm off. I've got about 2 millimeters worth of fudge around with a kind of a wide shot group. That doesn't, at 100 yards, doesn't equal 20 millimeters of variance at 1,000 yards. It just doesn't directly convert. It's not exponential, but it's in between, and I'm not great at math. I'm sure there's a word for it. If you know the word, go ahead and edify me and put it down in the remarks. Let other people see what it is. Or if anybody has more information they want to share, has a video or something they want to link in the bottom with a good explanation of that accuracy and barrel breaking, go for it. I'm just going to talk about the research. So, moving along, I knew I was going to have 100 rounds before break-in. I knew I was going to have issues with ammunition. I knew I was going to have to purchase special magazines to be better off. I knew I only had one upper possible. I knew I only had one BCG possible. I knew I only had one barrel I was going to get quickly. I knew there were problems off the bat, and it still took a year. I wouldn't say that the whole COVID thing was typical, that's something you should plan into your builds, but you need to be aware sometimes when you get into the weeds with some weird stuff, you're going to have some wait times. I actually got my barrel a lot sooner than expected. I bought it on a Black Friday special right around just after Thanksgiving, and it actually arrived like the same year. So there was 1 month, they were claiming 90 days, and it arrived in less. So you can't necessarily plan on everything working out like that, because I actually waited to order other parts. I ordered a few parts on like Christmas specials and deals and coupons and things like that. But when you look at your price and you look at a budget, look at your timeline. You know, is my budget going to change as my timeline changes? Ammunition prices changed radically. I do not even recall what they were, but now 6.5 PRC is a minimum of $2 every time you pull the trigger. I found some. This Norma was less expensive to give me the brass to reload for myself later. I would not say that it is a situation where you are going to be able to save a significant amount of money because you run into problems with powder availability. So on the reloading side of your research, this is something else you need to look at. Hopefully, if you reload, you have a couple of different resources. And as time goes on, a lot of things are going to change. For instance, just this year, the reason I hold this one up is because the new Ramshot Grand has come out. Before, you had a Ramshot Magnum and Magnum Pro, I think, were both by Ramshot. You had RL 2526. You had 2 or 3 other Magnum powders, but in general, you didn't have a lot of Magnum powders. Now, when I get into the reloading side video, I'm working on load development on Stay Ball HD. So not the brand new Grand stuff. Stay Ball HD. The new 2024 Hodgdon's Reloading has a couple charts for Stay Ball HD, which will give me a head start when I get to that point on this. So another consideration if you're going to reload, how hard's the powder to get? I mentioned RL26. I wanted RL26 because I wanted high velocities. I wanted to be shooting lasers downrange. Light bullets really friggin' fast, hopefully manageable recoil, the whole 9 yards. That was my goal. Any of you who reload, RL26 has become a royal pain to get. I literally have not found it for sale. Now it's been like 2-3 years. I haven't found it anywhere. That's actually why I ended up going with the Stay Ball HD, because it came out. When it came out, it was newer. I was like, okay. I found a couple pounds of H110. I think that's the one of the older Magnum powders. I don't know. I don't care. It's not on my shelf anymore. Stayball HD is. I ended up trading somebody because they wanted what I had and they were willing to do a trade. So I will work up some load developments. I will share some data and we'll look at some things on what we got. But that was part of my research, was can I reload it? At the time, didn't seem that bad. Now, yeah, Merry Christmas. COVID, thanks. Supply issue. Oh my God. So while that may not be something typical that you need to look at during your research, is pandemics. I mean, maybe you do. If your deal is preparing for some form of collapse of something, maybe that needs to be a part of your planning and your research. But it was not in this case for me. My ultimate why was because I wanted something longer range with more punch. So I ended up with 6.5 PRC, and as of post-assembly and everything else, I have been enjoying the round. It is not inexpensive to shoot out of anything, but to me, the way I set it up, and I'll talk more about it in other videos, I find the recoil to be highly manageable. I have a jig that I set up to measure recoil, which is my jig. It only works for me, and it only works to compare my numbers to my other numbers. The numbers I came out with in a full rifle setup versus a carbine buffer, but a full rifle setup, and my rifle is like 17 pounds with optics, so it is a heavy baby. But my recoil numbers, when comparing cartridges off the same lower, on a rifle length lower, my 6.5 Creedmoor was my lowest recoil for what I own. And then surprisingly, my 6.5 PRC recoil numbers came in slightly under my 308 recoil numbers. Now, it's difficult to reproduce because ammos are a consideration, reloading is a consideration. I try to use all BS cheap, bottom of the barrel, commercially purchased. Literally, I buy the cheapest ammo I can get in that caliber from a certain chain that I've discussed in some of my other videos, and they don't offer 6.5 PRC. So that comparison is based on the Normas at 3,000 feet per second when compared to like the Remington Core Locked or the Remington white box stuff that's up on the shelf for a few bucks. So there is some difference there, and especially in a Magnum, you're going to experience some differences. But my numbers worked out to be very, very close, like literally within 1%. So it was real close to each other. And then down here, kind of off the chart, was the 300 Winchester Magnum, Winchester Short Magnum, that I built parallel with the 6.5 PRC that I no longer own because it was a bear to shoot. I will discuss the verses in the build. So recoil-wise, my experiences still work out that way. That the 6.5 Creedmoor gives me the lightest recoil on a rifle lower in a 20-24 inch barrel roughly, because I shoot 20-inch barrel in all three. And I won't say that every time you will be able to squeeze the trigger on a 6.5 PRC AR and maintain your sight picture and see where your round strikes downrange, but it is not impossible to do. If you bunker it down, you get a good solid foundation of support, and you gently squeeze, and you have good marksmanship foundations, it is possible to see your round strike downrange with the 6.5 PRC. I can barely kind of do it with 308. I can barely kind of do it with 6.5 PRC. With 6.5 Creedmoor, I shoot a heavier rifle, and I want that ability to see my round strike downrange for accuracy, so I know where I need to adjust. Because I don't assume that somehow I'm going to be able to have a buddy tagging along and spotting me and telling me how to adjust my rounds. So I like that out of 6.5 PRC. I am hoping to be able to load to magnify that. So again, if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, hit your notifications, stay tuned for other videos that I will be doing, not just on the 6.5 PRC, but on other things. I hope that I've been able to answer some questions that people may have about building an AR with 6.5 PRC before you get into the build, just on the research portion and kind of an explanation of why I did this. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you share it with friends. I hope you got good information out of it. I hope you go out and look for other sources of information to compare to mine and see what happened and how other people felt about this. Don't use just one source. That's all I'm saying. Thank you all very much for tuning in. Hope that you will see me again later in my other videos. And as always, don't be a dick. Have a great day.